Hi everyone. I'm currently 2 months postpartum and I actually wanted to just sit and talk about my labor and delivery story. It did not go anything like how I planned, and so I just wanted to share and kind of think back on exactly what happened because I finally feel like I can process. I really wanted to do this because I feel like when I went in to give birth, I had no expectations and I just did not know what to expect. And so I'm hoping that my story will be somewhat helpful or somewhat informative in any way. So let's just sit and chat, get updated with one another. I also want to just preface this. If you are someone who gets very anxious listening to other people's delivery story or hearing these types of stories makes you a little nervous, then maybe this is not the video for you. With that being said, let me share everything that has happened. I was supposed to get induced on February 14th. Now that week, that Sunday at night, Jay and I were like, I really hope that we don't have to get induced. I hope the baby comes out naturally. So we prayed and we were like, please let the baby come out earlier. And then that morning on Monday, I went to use the bathroom, and I believe that's actually when my water broke, but I didn't know because I was using the toilet and I had slight cramping, but I didn't think anything of it. So I went back to bed, and then all of a sudden, I think around 5 a.m., I woke up to a really sharp pain, which I immediately knew, like, this is not a cramp. This is for sure a contraction. For those of you who don't know what a contraction feels like, it basically feels like you have to poop and you're also getting rolled over by a truck at the same time on your stomach. It is the most painful thing that I have ever experienced. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what torture feels like. 5 a.m. I woke Jay up and I was like, I think I'm having a contraction. But from what I've heard from other people is that usually people have like a contraction, but then there is some time between the next contraction. So I thought that my case would be the same. So I was basically like, once it settled down, I told Jay, like, maybe we have time, just go back to bed. But then very soon after, I got another contraction. I called the doctor and then they said, okay, when your contraction comes within 2 to 3 minutes, call again and start coming in. Immediately right after I hung up, the next contraction came. I think I was getting contractions around a minute apart, which is very, very close. So immediately I was like, we need to go. And already at this point, I had trouble walking because my pain was already so intense. We got into the car. Thankfully, the hospital's not that far. Once we got there was nobody around because it was so early in the morning. Jay and I did not know that there were wheelchairs. So essentially from the parking lot all the way to labor and delivery, which was on the 3rd floor, like at the end of the hallway, I walked. And I remember I was just like grabbing onto the walls, like barely could walk, grabbing onto Jay. We finally get there. I told the front desk lady, like, already, like, when can I get my epidural? And she was like, oh, sweetie, like, that's going to take a really long time. Because apparently to get an epidural, you have to send all your blood work to lab. The doctor has to review it from the lab. And once it gets approved, then it gets sent to anesthesiology. Then anesthesiology comes. That process, I believe, is around like 30-40 minutes. I was already going into like active labor. So I was already dying. My contractions were coming very rapidly and I was having no break. They hooked me up with all these IVs. At this point, I was still screaming, like, give me my epidural. When am I going to get the epidural? And the nurse kept saying, like, oh, the labs are still not approved. They're still not approved. After an hour, it finally got approved. So she was saying, like, okay, it got approved. They should be coming soon. 20 minutes. At this point, my eyes were like rolling back. I legit felt like I was dying. And I was like, this is it. This is how I'm gonna go. 20 minutes passes. I was like, where is my epidural? The nurse was like, I'm so sorry, but it seems like the anesthesiologist is in an emergency ER surgery. So you have to wait even longer. So maybe 20 more minutes. By this point, already 2 hours had passed. And I just remember I was like, somebody please help me. Like, I need help. The fact that there was only one anesthesiologist on call, that seemed a little absurd considering that this hospital is really big. It was just a little mind-blowing to me that there was only one anesthesiologist on call. Finally, the guy came. I was having another contraction, so he was like, okay, we're gonna wait till your contraction's over. And finally, they sat me up and he was saying, like, you need to stay extremely still as we put in the needle. And I remember I was having a contraction as he was putting in the needle. I wanted to die. That was the worst pain that I've ever experienced. Epidural goes in and everything goes numb. At that point, it's around 8 in the morning. And I was like, okay, maybe the hard part is over. Maybe it's smooth sailing from here. Okay, all I have to do now is push and we're done. We're done with this 9 months of pregnancy. So we waited until I was 10 centimeters dilated. Finally, at around around 2 p.m., the nurse finally comes in and she says, okay, it's time to push. Now, when you look at your monitor, for me, there were two lines. The top line was the baby's heartbeat and the bottom is actually the contractions. So you could see when your contraction is coming, but because I'm so numb, I can't feel anything. Little did I know, but you're supposed to start pushing when your contractions are actually very close together. But when I looked at my contractions, it was like one contraction and then 2 to 3 minutes would pass and then the next contraction would come. So little did I know that that was way too far apart for me to start pushing, but the nurse actually wanted me to start pushing already. She started positioning me in like really weird, moving my leg to the left and to the right. I was pushing like my life depended on it, thinking that it was doing something. She noticed my contractions weren't coming fast enough, so she injected something in me. We realized that that still wasn't helping me have faster contractions. So an hour passed, and then finally I think she noticed something was wrong or like it just wasn't working. So she called in 2 midwives. So at that point there were 2 midwives and that one nurse. One of the midwives is an intern and the other midwife was like the main midwife. Again, they like repositioned me. She saw my condition and she told me like, hey, your baby is actually positioned in a way that he's like curled up. So no matter how much you pushed, you were not going to get him out. Which for me, I was like, why didn't you guys check his positioning before I pushed for an hour? So she basically told me like, you pushed for an hour for no reason. And then she proceeded to manually started turning the baby. So she put her hand in and she grabbed his skull and was turning him inside. When she pulled her hand out, I actually lost a ton of blood apparently. And this is all told to me later by my mom, who was also in the room. She pulled her hand out. I lost a ton of blood. That area basically started swelling because it got ruptured. The midwife started asking me weird questions like, oh, are you anemic by any chance? Did you think of other ways of delivery that you would consider? For instance, like there's the forceps delivery or C-section. And I remember I was telling her like, no, that wasn't even part of my plan. Like I just want to do it vaginally. So I kept pushing for another hour. So at this point, 2 hours has passed. The initial nurse that was in the room, she basically got swapped out by a new nurse. That new nurse came in. She saw my area. You could tell that she was like, oh my God, what is going on? So she got an ice pack and she started like icing me because it was so swollen. I kept pushing. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was making progress. The midwife again proceeds to tell me like, hey, it seems like your baby got into a weird position again. So she then proceeded to do the same thing. So she put her hand in again. And when she pulled out, I lost a ton of blood and it just made that area swell even more. And on top of that, as I was pushing, the nurses started realizing that the baby's heart rate was declining every time I was pushing. I thought I was making progress. I thought I was doing the best that I could. And the nurse again kept asking me like, did you think of other options that you want to do? And I told her, no, I want to keep pushing. At this point, that midwife actually had her gloves off. She had her gloves on before, like helping me move positions and things like that. But at this point, she already took her gloves off. So the only person that was helping me was that nurse that initially was icing me. So that midwife had her gloves off. She was sitting in a position kind of like this, like she did not care. And she was like, okay, are you ready to push? Ready? 1, 2, 3, push. But she like already gave up on me at this point. And for me, I didn't know. So I was pushing like my life depended on it. Eventually, when we found out that the baby's heart rate was dropping, she went out of the room and I didn't know what was happening. The doctor finally comes in. This is the first time I've ever seen the doctor. The doctor never came in throughout this whole process. The doctor comes in, she's like over the bed and she's telling me like, hey, it seems like your baby heartbeat is dropping from the stress. So I would recommend a C-section. And at this point for me, I'm like, I do not care. Just get the baby out and make sure he's healthy and safe. And so she's telling me all these things, like all the side effects of a C-section. My mom on the side, I couldn't concentrate on her, but she was extremely distressed and she was holding back tears because again, this was the last thing that we thought. We thought that it was going to be an easy delivery. I really do believe that I could have had an easy delivery if the midwife and the nurses actually did their job and checked his positioning before and didn't make me push so early on. Usually I would say I wouldn't blame people, but for this one, I'm like, no, I 100% believe that it was the midwife and the nurse's fault. They should have done their due diligence to check his positioning. They should have made sure that my contractions were closer. They shouldn't have made me keep pushing if they knew that I didn't have a chance. So anyways, the doctor comes in, reads all the things that could happen from a C-section. I either have to consent, so I'm like, yes, I consent. They give Jay scrubs and they wheel me in, and it's like a Korean drama because all I see are the lights. I can't even say bye to my mom. Later I had to find out that my mom was like in the waiting room bawling her eyes out, obviously, because she saw her daughter go through all that, and at the end it resulted in having to get a major surgery. I also do want to say, I feel like when we talk about C-sections, it's very lightly, like everyone's like, oh yeah, like I had a C-section or I'm a C-section baby, but it is a very intense surgery that I feel like people just downplay a lot. You're basically ripping into like layers of skin. They're taking out all your like intestines and everything, taking the baby out and then stuffing it all back in and then stitching you up and then sending you off. When people say like I had a C-section, it is a huge surgery. I got wheeled in, they strapped my arms down and then they put a cover so I can't see anything. And I remember I started breaking down because I didn't want to cry in front of my mom, and I wanted to have a positive attitude throughout the whole thing. But I remember when I was going to begin the surgery, I was like, what is happening right now? Like, what is happening? Also, I just feel like the day of delivery, you're running off adrenaline, excitement, and also like fear. You cannot process in your brain the emotions that you're going through. So I just remember I was on the surgery bed. They start injecting you with all these things. You don't know what's going on. Jay finally comes in and he's like sitting next to me. And both of us, like I could tell like we were trying to keep it together. Even thinking about it, it was just so emotionally taxing. But in the moment, like you don't even know what you're feeling. Your main priority is like the baby. After the baby came out, I got intense tremors, which happens after you get C-section. Like my teeth were chattering. They take Jay and then they take the baby and you have to leave the room. So you're left on the surgery table and they're stitching you back up. That nurse also gave me a first-degree vaginal tear, so I had a C-section wound as well as my vaginal tear from the midwife, which was crazy. It's crazy to think about that I got a vaginal tear. He wasn't even like close to coming out. We finally came out. Thankfully, baby was healthy. Thankfully, surgery ended. From the hospital, you get dismissed after like 2 days, which now that I think about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like women are expected to go through pushing out a baby and then expected to take care of that baby before taking care of themselves within like 2 days, even if you got surgery. Anyways, we came home. I took my jacket off, and obviously I would think that the doctors would do their job to make sure like I'm discharged properly. I took my jacket off. I looked down at my arm and I see that I have my IV still in. So they didn't even take my IV out. So Jay actually had to pull my IV out from my arm at home, which is so like, it's so absurd, the fact that we had to do that on our own. They should have checked beforehand. Thankfully, we came home. I was like, okay, now all I have to do is recover. But then suddenly I started getting really weird side effects. For instance, my whole body became pasty white. I lost all the blood in my hands, my face. I had a difficult time breathing. Like my sternum felt like someone was pushing down on my sternum. My feet began to swell. We called the hospital. They said, yeah, you should probably go to the ER. There's an OBGYN ER, so if you go in, you don't have to wait that long. We're like, okay, great. Get into the car, go to the ER, go to the front. We're like, hey, we heard that there's an OBGYN ER. Like, where is it? The person in the front was like, what are you talking about? There's no such thing as an OBGYN ER. You just have to wait here. So this is like crazy to me because I'm like, are you guys not working in the same hospital? Like, what is going on? So we are at the ER from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. We're waiting to get x-rays. We're waiting to get CT scans. Finally, we get into the ER room and we're waiting again. 40 minutes pass. We can hear all the nurses outside. They are laughing. They're talking about random stuff. We call one of the nurses in. We're like, hey, what's the update on our CT scan? Because we've been in here for 40 minutes. The nurse is like, oh, let me call the CT department. They call the CT department, basically tells the nurse like, oh, we were actually waiting for you guys to let us know that she's ready to go get a CT. So basically, Jay and I were like flabbergasted because we were like, so if we never called you guys in here, would we have just been in this room for like 40 plus minutes waiting? Finally, the CT person comes, they take me and they wheel me into the CT room. This is like 2 days after I just got discharged from the hospital. Once I'm in the room, I immediately get PTSD to the surgery room of my C-section and I start having a full-blown panic attack. So by the end of my CT scan, when they're wheeling me out, I am at this point bawling my eyes out. I am like not okay mentally. I remember telling Jay, like, I do not care if I'm sick. I need to get out of here. I need to go home. I do not want to be here. I want to go home to Luke and I never want to come back to the hospital ever over again. Obviously, you can't just leave the ER, so we have to stay there. Finally, the doctor comes in. The doctor says, hey, like CT scans came back, everything's okay, like blood work's okay. However, we did find an enzyme that is really, really high, and that enzyme is highly correlated with heart failure. The doctor basically tells us, I would recommend you to go get a heart ultrasound to make sure your heart is doing okay. I had to get my heart ultrasound. We asked them, like, how long is it going to take to get the results? They're like, end of this week. So we're like, okay. The end of the week comes, no results. Next week comes, nothing. So we call them, we say, hey, where's our heart ultrasound results? The person basically says like, oh, your doctor didn't see it yet. I can go ahead and message your doctor. So again, we're like, if we didn't call you guys, would you guys never have let us know about the results of the heart ultrasound? Thankfully, we're good. I am alive. I am healthy. Our baby is healthy, but it was the worst experience of my life. The most traumatic. I have never felt so uncared for. I felt like I was truly just a number in the hospital. They did not care about my health. They did not care if I lived or died or if my baby lived or died. They did not do their due diligence to help as caregivers. I just felt so angry and upset. I really just want to make this video, number one, because now that I think about it, I'm so mad still. And two, I just do not think anybody has to go through this experience. Like, this should be an experience that is beautiful. Obviously, I understand that there are dire situations where you do need to get a C-section. I totally get it. I do feel like it is people's responsibilities to make sure that patients are taken care of. We are entrusting these caregivers and these medical professionals with our lives, and the fact that it was so far from what I expected, I really just do not wish that upon anybody. Again, I do understand that there are different cases, situations, and things that can come up. For me, it was one of the worst experiences, most traumatic experiences. And I think just like mentally, emotionally, I remember I had a really, really hard time processing everything because, you know, you go through something so physical and then you get home and you realize how much your body has been through. And I remember I just cried and cried after I came home and I got dismissed because I was so sad. And I felt sorry for myself that I had to go through all of that my body felt like it got broken into a million pieces. And then I was required to just get up and start taking care of the baby when I myself was not even recovered. I was not mentally okay. Emotionally, I was not okay. And just like physically, obviously, I was definitely not okay. So basically, I wanted to make this video because my heart goes out so much to women who have to go through labor and delivery. And again, I want to say some people have a really smooth and easy experience and some people just don't. Regardless of which side it is, the things that we have to go through as new moms, it's insane and it's crazy. And I just do not think people put enough emphasis on it. You know, I really think about my mom a lot. I think about all the other moms that have experienced this. And yeah, my heart is just very like empathetic towards moms. Everything that we've been through it's like so insane. And I know everyone says like, you're gonna forget about it. Like you'll forget about it and then you'll have another kid. But I don't think that it should just be something that's tossed under the rug and just taken as like, oh, that's like a normal thing. It's so far from it. And I just think like people do not give women enough credit for what they have to go through and what they have to endure. Oh my God. That was basically my entire labor and delivery experience. My biggest advice to people who are going to have a baby soon is really stand up for yourself. Don't be afraid to ask questions like, why am I pushing right now if the contractions are so far from each other? Really challenge if you feel like something isn't right. All right. That was a lot. I hope this was helpful for someone. It was good for me to like process everything. That was my life update, 2 months postpartum. Thanks for watching and I'll talk to you guys later.